Myanmar could soon lift a ban that forbids its citizens from working legally as maids in Singapore. Maid associations from both countries told CNA they're working together on an MOU that they plan to present to authorities.
They hope the move could, in turn, lead to better protection and pay for maids here. Our Myanmar correspondent Young Wei Kit has more.
They cook, clean and care for the families they live with. But foreign maids don't always get the same support from their hosts. And getting help is especially tricky for those from Myanmar.
They are not recognized in being here working in Singapore by their own government itself already puts them in a vulnerable state. Having said that, I think the larger picture is also some factors such as education and also language literacy ability.
In 2014, Myanmar banned its citizens from working as maids abroad. There were concerns that some were being abused. But NGOs estimate that some 50,000 Myanmar maids are still here in Singapore. One big question is, why then can Myanmar maids work in Singapore? Well, that's because Singapore recognizes any foreign worker who has valid work permits. I've spoken to many NGOs in Singapore and Myanmar, and they say that this is one big grey area. What happens is there are agents in Myanmar who will arrange for women to work in Singapore as foreign domestic workers. So once they're here in Singapore, these agents will apply for them proper documentation. But because of this, many Myanmar maids who face problems in Singapore, they're reluctant to go to help at the Myanmar embassy in Singapore. That's because they feel that they're illegal. But NGOs have told me that so far, the Myanmar embassy has not turned down any Myanmar maid who seeks their help. Meanwhile, NGOs are relying on their network of volunteers from Myanmar to reach out to maids here. Mr. Shamsul says that if maids can work here legally, agencies will be able to go to Myanmar to train them, which could help them adapt to life in Singapore and boost their pay.
Knowing that Singapore might likely need a greater supply of domestic workers since we are having a growing elderly population, this would also give confidence to workers, FDWs from countries like Myanmar to come to Singapore and work. All right? Then this would also translate to the possibility of us working with our network in Myanmar, put in standards.
For now, details of the business-to-business MOU are being ironed out. And it's hoped that this is a first step to convince Myanmar to allow maids to work in Singapore.
And Liang Wankit joins us now for more updates. Okay, Wankit, you just mentioned there that, despite the ban, there are some 50,000 Myanmar workers here. Can you just elaborate on that?
Well, yes. Of course, the big question is, why this still happens. I said earlier that, Myanmar has banned the workers. Singapore still welcomes them. And now, if you think about it, the rationale behind this, both countries have their reasons, and it comes from a good place. Firstly, Myanmar doesn't allow its people to work overseas because they want to protect them for fear of them being abused overseas. Singapore's viewpoint is that if you are a worker and you want to come to Singapore to contribute and you have valid work permits, you're welcome to do so. So both have merits for doing so. However, this creates a grey area. When I was in Myanmar, I met up with NGOs, and I've heard horrific stories about how some Myanmar women were sort of, cheated out of their savings. You see, what happens is there are networks of agents, and it's very hard to track these dishonest agents because they keep changing. But these agents are there. So they go to villages and ask women if you want to work in Singapore. They then plan the route for them to go to Singapore, and then they give them proper work permits. The problem is because it's illegal, they can jack up the fees. And then when they have problems in Singapore, and they want to go back to Myanmar, what happens is the network of agents gets wind of it. So they stop the maids at the airports and they say, hey, you owe me money, so you are getting on the next flight to somewhere else, continue your stint as a maid, and you pay me that money. So this grey area becomes a problem. So on the NGO to NGO front, Singapore NGOs, what they do is they work with their counterparts in Myanmar. What they do is they try to go to the villages and tell the women that if you want to work in Singapore because the pay is high, if you want to work in Singapore, these are your rights. They educate them on their rights so that they know the pitfalls, and they then sort of given the power to say no to dishonest agents.
So with this change in policy then, how does that change things by making it sort of legal on the Myanmar side? Will that then lead to regulation?
Well, For a start, this business-to-business MOU could be a first step to Myanmar lifting the ban. Now, if that happens, it's win-win. First and foremost, the immediate effect is if you legalize maids coming to Singapore to work, they get better training, they get better pay. When they come to Singapore to work, they can send money back home. On a bigger picture, this works for Myanmar as well, because Myanmar, if you remember, they're opening up. They're asking investors to come to the country. They want to open up the economy. One quick example is the tourism industry has already opened up. They sort of waived off visa applications for Japanese, South Korean tourists, Macau, Hong Kong tourists. So tourism sector has opened up. More recently, the insurance sector also opened up. They allowed some foreign firms to operate in Myanmar. And very soon in Myanmar, casino industry could well open up too, because now they're trying to amend the law to allow casino investors into Myanmar. If you put all these events together, I won't be surprised if the foreign domestic sector opens up as well, because like I said, it's win-win. One, State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi already says that the people in Myanmar are its greatest resource. So if you open the sector up, agencies can come in, train their people, give them better pay in future. One quick example, Myanmar is already working with Japan to train its workers to go to Japan to take care of the elderly. So these are all win-win possibilities. Like I said, it's if, not when. Of course, NGOs and many stakeholders are hoping that this will be a reality soon.
All right, thanks very much for helping us understand all that, Young Wai Kit, our Myanmar correspondent.